Picture a horde of fearsome Vikings barreling into battle, each sporting giant horned helmets, a look that screams less fierce warrior and more basement cosplay convention. Somewhere between Ragnar Lothbrok and heavy metal album covers, those ridiculous horns have become pop culture's go-to Viking bling. The only thing missing? An IKEA warning label. Some assembly required, not for actual pillaging. Why the myth? Blame the 19th century, as Norse mania swept opera houses and drawing rooms. Artists, especially Wagner's ring cycle set designers, got creative, adding horns so the chorus could look extra menacing while belting out high notes. History had zero input in this mess, and just like that, horned helmeted Vikings strutted off stage and into our collective imagination. So what did real Vikings wear? Sorry to crash your LARP party, but archaeology tells a boring truth. Plain, rounded helmets. No horns to catch on branches or flop around during axe swings. The only horned helmets unearthed are Bronze Age relics, centuries before anyone shouted, "Skull!" in Viking style. Horns in combat? About as useful as wearing a chandelier on your head. Theatrical flair aside, survival demanded practicality, and practical meant horn-free helmets. If any Viking ever sported horns, it was probably for a masquerade ball, not a battlefield. Plus, imagine the helmet storage nightmare, or squeezing into longships with those things jutting out. So next time you picture a Viking, leave the horns at the opera house. Real warriors handed those over to future Halloween enthusiasts and heavy metal frontmen. Beyond their iconic headgear, the perception of Vikings extends to their reputed ferocity in battle. When you hear Viking, do you picture a helmeted brute grunting through a burning village, barely pausing to gnaw on a sheep's femur and mutter, "Raid good"? You're not alone. Popular culture's done to Vikings what ketchup does to a fine steak, obliterated all nuance. They're cast as gruff, muddy savages, as if their greatest joy was thwacking monks and their second favorite hobby was shouting. Let's sharpen the horned helmet record. Vikings weren't just axe addicts. They were trading wizards, crafting pros, adept writers, and brace yourself, fastidious hair combers. That's right, the burly raider who apparently smelled like defeat actually owned more grooming tools than your trendiest hipster barbershop. These barbarians crisscrossed Europe and Asia, founding towns, bartering with Baghdad's finest, and sending postcards, well, runes from Dublin. Village burning? Amateur hour. Real Vikings ran their own parliaments, or things. Rowdy town meetings that double as early democracy boot camp. And guess who showed up to sort out land disputes? Viking women! Because Norse ladies could own property, divorce their husbands, and generally tell Thor where to stick his hammer. So next time someone calls Vikings primitive, remind them these folks could knit, navigate, negotiate, and probably find your split ends embarrassing. Sure, they raided, but they also invented the weekend getaway, sometimes with souvenirs that bit back. If this is barbarism, sign me up for the Longship Club. So next time you hear the swords versus steel legend, remember, there's bravery, there's folly, and then there's the just as surprising military tactics challenge our perceptions, the image of ninjas. If you picture ninjas spending their nights cosplaying as the Grim Reaper, think again. Thank you, Hollywood, but we'll take it from here. Blockbusters love to dress ninjas like Gap employees clocking overtime. All black, deadly serious, and probably sick of folding hoodies. The myth says these sea raiders bathed only when the North Sea dumped a wave on them. Let's unravel. Vikings were medieval clean freaks. Real ninjas knew this. A man in gleaming black under moonlight looks less like a threat and more like a walking ink blot. That's more likely to earn laundry tips than strike fear into a samurai's heart. If anything, the true Viking helmet was just really well-conditioned hair with a spritz of sea salt spray. Their grooming game was so strong, English records grumble about Anglo-Saxon maidens swooning over the invaders' pampered locks, capes, and dramatic leaps. Pure stagecraft, not paddy field practicality. The The legendary disappearing act in a puff of Vikings knew looking sharp was half the raid. Instead of nunchucks, ninjas often carried baskets. Perfect for blending in, less perfect for blockbuster fight scenes. So next time you picture a Viking landing, don't imagine wild-haired monsters. Think, we come for your gold. But first, anyone got some beard oil? Now, if Hollywood would quit casting them as rejects from a wet dog contest, history's shampoo sponsorship would finally make sense. In addition to assumptions about their cleanliness, ideas about Viking society's gender roles are often oversimplified. Picture a sea of muscle-bound Vikings with beards so thick you'd lose your lunch twice in them. If cracking the Enigma code was a walk in the park, then Stonehenge must be just a fancy pile of pebbles. Hollywood loves these burly barbarians, crowding their longboats with bearded bruisers sporting whiskers that might need their own zip code. This cliche is so overplayed it practically comes with a horned helmet and a maple syrup endorsement from your local lumberjack. But here's the kicker! The myth that every Viking was a towering, brawny, manly warrior with a beard suitable for bib duty. Total myth! The Bletchley Park codebreakers weren't lounging on garden benches. They were shivering in leaky wooden huts that made If this was a stroll in the park was rigged with landmines, labyrinthine hedges, and not a single ice cream vendor in sight. Only soggy sandwiches and so much for the boys-only club. More oy vey than eureka, you can bet. Some were short, some slender, and brace yourselves, some didn't bother with the beard at all. Having a beard wasn't a membership requirement, though it did come in handy when fjord mornings got frosty. Contrary to Hollywood's lumberjack fantasies, Vikings came in all shapes and sizes. The kicker? Norse fashionistas prized grooming. Combs turn up at archaeological digs like ancient pocket mirrors. So next time someone calls it a simple stroll, remind them this park was more obstacle course than picnic, and its victory anything but leisurely. These gender role misconceptions also tie into popular images of Viking revelry and the vessels they used for drinking. Picture this! Burly Vikings swinging from longhouse rafters, guzzling ale from mighty dragonhorn goblets. Because why sip when you can slosh? Movies have hammered it into our brains that no Norse bash was legit without every warrior hoisting some wild animal appendage, roaring to Thor and spilling mead like it was an Olympic event. What could possibly go wrong, right? Let's axe that myth! Sure, horn chalices look epic clenched in a hero's fist, but for the average Viking, drinkware was far more, well, pedestrian. Most Norse folks sipped sensibly from wooden cups, sturdy pottery, or plain glassware. Not quite as cinematic, but way easier on your tunic and your dignity. The truth? Now, horns absolutely existed, but not for everyday ale chugging. They were status symbols, ceremonial bling, the Viking version of breaking out the family's finest crystal. And honestly, they handled about as well as a greased eel. Set one down mid-toast and boom, a minor flood. The Viking feast slip and slide, where the only real danger was a lap full of very sticky mead. So much for heavy metal. If archaeologists have uncovered a pretty humdrum collection of cups, bowls, and jugs at Norse sites, but horns, few and far between. The facts! Drinking from a horn was less habit, more flex, a party trick reserved for special occasions, or showing off to guests. Maybe with more fur, but definitely less flair than your local opera star. The festive scenes of Vikings drinking also lend to assumptions about their appearance, including body art. Picture a burly Viking, fresh from raiding, flaunting a full-sleeve tattoo that would make your trendiest hipster cry into his oat milk latte. Just the silhouette of one of these metal monsters sent shivers through admirals and gave wooden fleets a collective existential crisis. In pop culture, our axe-wielding Norsemen aren't just marauders. They're the original body art trendsetters. Netflix and Hollywood gleefully deck them out in ink from scalp to toes, probably even in spots requiring a mirror, a ladder, and questionable life choices to admire. But let's pull this longship back to shore for a reality check. The proof of Viking full-body tattoos is thinner than a berserker's patience at a salad bar. Sure, they were famous for stabbing things, not themselves, but shields and enemies. But archaeologists have yet to unearth any tattoo kits in Viking grave goods. Skin doesn't do well after a millennium buried in Nordic moss, so we're left chasing cryptic clues. Enter Ahmad ibn Fadlan, a 10th century Arab traveler who described the Rus, likely Viking cousins cruising down Russian rivers, as marked with dark patterns from neck to nails. Tattoos. Dirt smudges? The world's first proto-emo eyeliner? The jury's still out. Meanwhile, Viking art is splashed everywhere. In wood carvings, metalwork, even brooding stone dragons, but never on actual skin. Frankly, if they did sport dragon tattoos, maybe the designs were so fierce the ink just fled before it could settle. So next time you see a Viking on screen looking like a Norse Harley-Davidson enthusiast, remember, some of that swagger is Hollywood's recipe for drama. And those Helga Forever runes, probably best left to the imagination, or at most, the temporary tattoo aisle at your local costume shop. While many envision Vikings marked by tattoos, others believe they were isolated within their homelands. Hook heard someone say Vikings never ventured far from their cozy fjords. Time for a longboat-sized reality check. My, we like to think of Vikings as Scandinavian couch potatoes, bravely stepping outside just long enough to grab some loot, then retreating to cuddle their horned helmets. Spoiler, those horns! Pure Hollywood cosplay. The fanciest Viking headwear was a woolly cap, not exactly the look to strike fear unless you happen to be allergic to sheep. Facts! In reality, Vikings put modern frequent flyer programs to shame. These intrepid explorers roamed farther than most of us drive in a year, fueled by equal parts ambition and bravado. Whether trading, raiding, or reveling, their travels spanned from Newfoundland's foggy shores all the way to the bustling bazaars of Constantinople. Archaeologists keep uncovering evidence. Norse settlements in North America, coins turning up in Central Asia, and runic graffiti etched in unexpected spots, like an ancient Istanbul bathroom. Even Vikings couldn't resist a little potty humor on foreign soil. Punch! So much for Netflix and chill! The real Norse saga was globetrot and pillage. Imagine Viking travel logs. Where's Ragnar this week? Instead of where's Waldo? If Vikings earned frequent sailor miles, they'd have upgraded to first class straight to Odin's VIP lounge by now. Bridge! Next time someone claims Vikings just hung around their local harbors, remind them these were the original backpackers, except their packs were axes, their passports runes, and their idea of a souvenir was, well, your stuff. Modern passport stamps are seriously jealous. Contrary to notions of isolation, Vikings' religious practices underwent significant changes influenced by the outside world. If you believe Hollywood, Vikings swapped axes for crosses in one glorious, dramatic baptismal flash mob, complete with interpretive hymn singing and miraculously pristine hair. According to legend, our favorite Norsemen woke up one morning, tossed aside their Thor hammers, and swapped pillaging for Protestantism the moment one king decided Jesus was the new MVP of Mead Night. In reality, the Christianization of Scandinavia was less a single miraculous dunk and more like a Nordic software update, stuck at 20% with a installing critical features bar dragging on for centuries. Kings didn't exactly glow with holy light. They sprinkled holy water when it suited international trade or sweetened diplomatic brunch invites. Convert on Sunday, attend continental brunch Monday. Vikings didn't ditch their Thor hammers overnight. They just hid them under the bed alongside their shiny new crosses. You know, just in case of spiritual emergencies. Forget mass conversions at sword point fueled by pure piety. Faith often boiled down to whichever ritual got you more business, more mead, or kept your village off the next raiding party's nice list. Some chieftains staged elaborate riverside baptisms, all light and drama for the crowd, then tiptoed home to quietly sacrifice one last goat to Odin, a sort of spiritual hedge fund. Even after Christianity won, Viking villages clung stubbornly to old gods like beard lice at a longhouse. If Wi-Fi passwords propagated as slowly as Christianity did, your grandma might still be handwriting her memes. Turns out conversion isn't measured in baptisms per minute, but in centuries of spiritual footwork and well-lubricated negotiations.